With only 2 days left before the official merger between the Kansas City Southern and Canadian Pacific Railroads, I would take a trip to Rich Mountain along the KCS to document some of the final pre-merger trains before the clock strikes midnight on April 14th, 2023. This video consists of various trains I captured between April 12th all the way down to midnight on April 14th. So sit back, relax, and enjoy KCS Countdown to Merger. With word of KCS's most famous train on the system making a final run before the merger, I would begin my trip a day earlier than anticipated. The KCS business train, also referred to as the Bell by both crews and fellow rail fans, was making a run north out of Shreveport, Louisiana to Kansas City, Missouri for the merger ceremony that would take place on April 14th. I started off the afternoon in Watts, Oklahoma. Getting the Bell crossing the Illinois River Bridge here in the evening light was a long-time goal of mine, so I opted to stick around Watts and wait it out rather than driving further south and risk missing the shot entirely. I would come to find out this would be a mistake later on. This train is northbound KCS 0573. 0573 is an empty unit oil train returning north from Texas. These trains come off the BNSF up north, so they typically utilize BNSF power like the one seen here today. While not the railroad I was here for, it still made for a nice scene crossing the river. I would move over towards the south end of Watts in time for KCS M263. M263 is one of the daily manifests from Shreveport, Louisiana to Kansas City, Missouri. Dispatch had lined up a meet here at Watts for M263 to meet a southbound grain train, so after the tail of M263 cleared, I went back in town to catch the grain load coming in. M263 will have some work to do in the yard here before continuing north. Now remember earlier when I said waiting here would have proved to have been a bad idea? This was around the time I figured that out. By this point, I had ideally wanted to be shooting the Bell crossing the river right now, but it was still nowhere in sight, and not to mention sunset was only about an hour and a half away. After getting word it wasn't even to Stillwell, Oklahoma yet, which is almost 30 miles south of me, I got in the car and hauled south in hopes of intercepting the train before it got dark. I got to just about Barron, Oklahoma when I found that the Bell had just cleared Stillwell. With not much time, I grabbed a shot of it crossing the Barron Fork Bridge. The light had just fallen off the bridge when the Bell came out of the tree line. I had moved back up near Westville, where the Bell would have to hold for a few minutes. He was catching up to a northbound empty coal train that was also having to slow down. That M263 we saw earlier was still occupying the main at South Watts, causing a bottleneck on the south end there. That southbound grain we also saw was still waiting there, and there was no way around him. Once things got moving again, it was after dark, so I moved up to Decatur, Arkansas to grab a still shot of the bell passing the other F unit, KCS 73D, which is on display sitting at the Depot Museum. 73D was initially an F-7A that had been converted into a road slug around 1978. Throughout the chase, I noticed that KCS-1 had been using the gyrolight at grade crossings. I set up to grab a video of it lit up as they approached Anderson, Missouri. They don't always use the gyrolight on KCS-1, but it's always a treat when they do. After letting the bell go in Anderson, I decided it was a good time to go ahead and start heading south to Heavener for the night. With not much happening on the mountain in terms of adequate lighting, I found myself set up in Poto, Oklahoma for northbound KCS train M261. M261 is the daily Shreveport to Kansas City manifest that also handles any intermodal traffic going north. This train is also known as the former Q, as it used to be called the QSHKC or MSHKC2 before the new symbol format revolving around the merger came into play. Something unique in today's train is that it had a string of brand new short 3-bay hoppers heading to be delivered. It was a relatively slow morning around Heavener, so this next train wasn't filmed till almost noon. It was the Fort Smith Dodger returning rather early from Fort Smith after interchanging with the Arkansas-Missouri Railroad in Fort Smith. This train used to not get back till almost dark, but the past few months saw it getting back in the late morning, early afternoon hours. With word of traffic starting to pick up, I headed down to Page, Oklahoma to grab a northbound grain train pulling into the siding. It would be meeting a southbound that was departing Heavener around the same time. The southbound train was KCS M262, also referred to as the southbound M from locals. This is a staple train for the area, as it's almost always working Heavener Yard in the early morning hours and can be counted on for good morning light across Rich Mountain. I opted to set up at the famous Rich Mountain S-curve, where I would meet some other rail fans who were also out for the last day of the KCS. Unfortunately, today's M262 had a CP ES44AC in the lead instead of a KCS Bell like many others, myself included, were hoping to see. Getting KCS power in the lead has always been a challenge on KCS rails due to all the foreign interchange trains they receive. but one could argue that's what makes KCS even more interesting with all the extra variety. After letting M262 go at Acorn, it'd be nearly a 3-hour wait till the next train. This wasn't a surprise, as Rich Mountain can always be a wild card for train traffic. Some days it can be busy, while other days it's fairly slow, with long gaps in between trains. However, the closer this merger has gotten, traffic has definitely increased with it. A northbound Texas Utilities Martin Lake coal empty would be the next train to show up that afternoon. These trains typically have BNSF power, but to our surprise, this one had a KCS SC70 Ace in the lead. We first laid eyes on it here at Eagleton. Unlike the slow southbound chases over the mountain, northbounds are going downhill all the way to Page so they can fly down the grade. After hitting Page, northbound trains start to climb uphill again, seen here at Blue Cut. Once part of the train crests the hill at Blue Cut, they pick up speed again going downhill. Back in Heavener, a southbound grain load had just finished refueling. This train had 2 special units on the head end consisting of CP 7030 and KCS 4859. CP 7030 bears a shield on the side of its nose dedicated to Lord Strathcona's Horse, which was an armored regiment of the Canadian Army. And then KCS 4859 was painted in March of 2020 for KCS's Safety Starts Here initiative. The conductor side of 4859 has the compass written in Spanish with a KCSM octagon, while the engineer side is written in English with the standard KCS octagon. While that train was rolling south, I opted to chase the Marble City Dodger, which was departing around the same time. This local is one of the more uncommon ones, and it happens to use the same power as the Fort Smith Dodger. While that train was rolling south, I opted to chase the Marble City Dodger, which was departing around the same time. This local is one of the more uncommon ones, and it happens to use the same power as the Fort Smith Dodger. While that train was rolling south, I opted to chase the Marble City Dodger, which was departing around the same time. This local is one of the more uncommon ones, and it happens to use the same power as the Fort Smith Dodger. Their first work would be in Howe, Oklahoma at the Arkansas-Oklahoma Railroad interchange. The old Rock Island Tri-Lights still stand at the Y here in Howe. After Howe, I would barely have enough time to set up at Shady Point before they came rocketing by. They would next be making a stop in Bonanza, Oklahoma to pick up a couple hoppers on the OG&E River Valley Power Plant lead. After watching the Marble City Dodger blast off from Bonanza, I would go grab some dinner and then head back into Heavener. After arriving in Heavener, there was a loaded Martin Lake coal load taking off from the Heavener depot. Once the coal train had left town, I moved over to the Heavener depot. Here I would hang out with some other notable rail photographers and rail fans for the rest of the night. We all had a common goal, and that was to catch the last KCS train to roll through Heavener at midnight. It was relatively quiet after the coal load left, but however, the nighttime Heavener yard crew had happened to be doing some switching at the south end of the yard with one of the KCS Jeeps. We knew there were two inbound trains heading towards Heavener, one north of town and the other south of town that had just left Page, but we weren't sure if they were going to make it before midnight. All of us at the depot that night knew that KCS paint will live on for many years to come, but that isn't quite why we were out there that night. Getting to witness probably the last railroad mega merger was something I had never thought I would see, and for past mergers, there was really no advanced warning on when they were going to happen. It was definitely a sad moment to see the KCS go, but I'm looking forward to seeing what the future holds under the new railroad. With the clock striking midnight, that officially closed the chapter on the Kansas City Southern, but at the same time, it opened up a new one on the Canadian Pacific Kansas City. I would like to thank everyone for watching. This was the video I had been wanting to make as soon as I had heard about the merger. I hope everyone has enjoyed watching as much as I did making it, and until then, I will see y'all next time.